So this movement is a really good way to address shoulders, your core, your hips, and it adds, if you don't like doing abs, highly recommend doing this movement. Now what makes this loop very useful is that it has multi-loops kind of built into it. So you have handholds that allows you to attach to different surfaces, so it's very multi-purpose. Now because it's also woven, this thing is extremely durable and you can use it for damn near anything. So one of the first movements I like to use is actually something this would be good for bench press. So all you're gonna do is you're gonna take this, wrap it around your back, and you're gonna create a little X pattern. Once you get onto the floor, you're set up and you have your handholds ready to go. Now, the place where I set this up, I put this underneath my shoulder blades because I wanna actually feel my shoulder blades moving as I'm doing this press variation. So essentially, I'm gonna get into floor position. Starting here, I'm gonna bridge up, simulating how you would push into the floor to create your hip drive during the bench. With my thumbs up, I'm going to make an arcing motion up and over my head. Now the resistance of this is really nice for activating the scapular stabilizers, including the serratus and your mid and low trap. And this is a staple movement that I use for any pressing variation. And also, if you're a jiu-jitsu artist, this is great for creating framing and creating space so you can make escapes, create sweep opportunities. So this movement is great for rehab specifically. So one of the things that we try to work on during rehab is just the controlling of where our knee is in space when we are putting weight through it. So one of the common movement dysfunctions that we see is that the knee wants to dive inward, which is not a problem, but if it's uncontrolled, can cause pain in certain structures. So this exercise I like to do is kind of more of a global warm-up for focusing on getting this leg nice and prepared for your squat, any kind of wrestling or jiu-jitsu activities. What you're gonna do is simply take the loop and you're gonna place it underneath the ball of your foot. Now what you're gonna do is to create a little bit of a spiral pattern through the foot. So I'm gonna go across the shin on the outside of the knee, behind the knee here to the hip. Now the reason for this is we want to help assist the arch of the foot, and then we're cueing the shin into external rotation, which is helping me stay away from diving in. This also provides a lot of proprioception, meaning I can feel this band. If I'm putting tension through it, that means that I am going into the position I'm trying to limit. And then because of this awesome loop, I have something to hold on to. If you need a little bit more, you can wrap it around to the other side and you can practice warming up the foot, the knee, the hip. So this is what I call a three-way hip position. You could do what dancers call the rond de jambe, where you're drawing little half circles. You can do fire hydrants. The single limb activities are essentially endless, but you get an idea of how we can control the knee in space utilizing this piece of equipment. The next movement we're going to utilize is more of a full body warm-up utilizing this piece of equipment. So essentially what we're going to do, we're going to take this and wrap it around the bottom of our glutes. We're going to create an X pattern in front, so you have your hand holds. And the reason why I'm placing this across my hip here, I'm placing this across my greater trochanter, which is the major bony prominence in my hip. And what I'm actively doing is I'm feeling that proprioception to help with hip abduction, which is going to activate more of the gluteus medius. And then I'm also getting a little bit hip extension and external rotation. So at the same time, we're really warming up the gluteus medius and gluteus maximus is what we're going for here. Now the cross pattern is nice because then we're going to start talking about energy transfer from our hips through our trunk muscles, activating our obliques and the deep rotators, our rotatories, and our multifidi in our spine. So once we get into this position, I'm feeling the tension by pushing my knees out, holding my hands here, and simply what I can do is step away from my right foot, reaching with the left, and then alternate. As soon as I put tension through this, everything up the chain from this foot all the way to my opposite side, I feel working immediately. And the resistance from this is perfect. It's not too heavy. Also, while doing this, didn't expect it, but also getting a nice little rotator cuff warm up just by being able to keep my arms out there. So while stabilizing here, my shoulders are getting a nice warm up. This is a perfect movement for a full body warm up. So everybody knows about the hip circle and how we use it to warm up our hips. We're trying to get our glutes warmed up. That's everybody's intent. Now, what most people don't know is that if you actually attach the band to your feet, you actually get a better glute activation and less activation through your tensor fasciae latae or your TFL, which actually turns into your IT band. Nobody wants their IT band activated, they want their glutes warmed up. So the way we can use this band, come across the feet here, create our little X pattern. Simply stand up like a deadlift, push into the band and step. Now you're gonna look like a little bit of a zombie, but what you're gonna feel, if you're pushing through this band through the outside of your feet, you're gonna feel your glutes get real warm real quick. You can walk diagonally with them. You don't need to cover much space, but it gets the job done very effortlessly. So this movement is a really good way to address shoulders, your core, your hips, and it adds, if you don't like doing abs, highly recommend doing this movement. So we're gonna take the band and we're gonna wrap it around the bottom of our shoulder blades. You guessed it, we're gonna make our little X pattern. Now when we get onto the floor, we're gonna get into a side plank position. Propped up on the elbow. And if you look at the landmarks of my feet, my hips and my shoulders are all in a straight line. Once I'm in position, I'm gonna push through this forearm and through my top knee, and I'm gonna come up into a side plank. Now, where this gets real spicy, we're gonna bring the knees away from each other and the hands away from each other. If you can hold this for 3 sets of a minute, you can move on to this next phase. But this isn't enough, might be enough for you. Now, if you do want to make it harder and you want to challenge yourself and give you something a little bit more challenging to do to warm up, this is going to turn into a little bit more of a shoulder emphasis. So we're getting into this position here. What I want to do is I'm going to take my top hand and rotate in a big sweeping arc towards the floor. Now, if you notice, my shoulders and my hips are rotating at the same time. I don't want any twisting through my spine. Not that it's bad, but it doesn't coordinate the abdominals the same way. So we're gonna rotate forward, and then this bottom hand is actually gonna push away back to the starting position. And if you see, I'm shaking like a leaf. I'm starting to get a little bit sweaty. This is just on the one side. So you can do this on both sides. Get yourself a nice little core workout in a very short amount of time, or it can be utilized as a nice warm-up before any type of exercise that you're doing, whether it's powerlifting in the gym or doing stuff on the mats.